in council chambers and jointly remotely. Now call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Does any member of council have any disclosure of pecuniary interests on items on today's agenda? Thank you. First item is adoption of the minutes. I have moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Bauer, that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted. The regular meeting of December 9th, 2024, and the special meeting of December 13th, 2024. Any errors, omissions, comments, questions on the minutes? No? Please open the vote. And that is carried. Moving on to question period. To the clerk, any residents online that wish to ask questions on items on today's agenda? No?
To you, Mr. Chair, none online.
None online, thank you. Are there any members of the public here to ask items on today's agenda? Please come forward. You'll have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. I have 2 quick comments. It won't take 5 minutes at all. And 2 quick questions with respect to items 3.2 on today's agenda, which relates to the 2025 budget meeting from December 13th, 2024. My first comment really doesn't relate to the agenda, but the actual meeting. I hope that the technical problems that we experienced on that meeting on December 13th have been resolved. We had similar technical problems in November, and I hope that that happens. And if the full public transcript could be posted on the Ajax site, the one on the YouTube video is very difficult to read. The second comment, I see that council reduced expenses by $94,600 in the 2025 budget. I thank you for that. But I think it's important to keep in mind, residents, that this amount still pales when compared to the $141 million in budgeted expenses, because it still resulted in a 3rd consecutive year of 6% property tax to residents.
Sorry, Mr. Glass.
My question.
Sorry, Mr. Glass, you're making a delegation. This is questions on items on the agenda. Please.
My question. Item 6 in the capital budget amendment section saw $1.6 million for the Kerrison to Roslyn project moved from 2025 to 2026. Are there plans to build a new road going south from Roslyn just east of the Longos Plaza through the existing wetlands all the way to Kerrison Drive to the south? And are there also plans to extend the road east of Fishlock through the same forest behind the Longos Plaza and then connect to the new road? I ask this question because when the Longos Plaza was sold around 2015, the surrounding wetlands, according to a conversation with Councillor Ashby, he told me that the wetlands and the forest that was given to the town by the landowner and that these environmentally sensitive lands would be protected as green space. So can you please answer those questions if there's plans for 2 new roads? Thank you.
I believe the answer to both those questions is no. I know for certain the second one, but I'll look to, I guess, Mr. Romanowski at planning, or who would be able to answer that as far as the first one, pushing out that Kerrison from 1 year to the next was just, I think, just to move it out. I don't think that makes any change to anything, but as far as whether we're going to extend through the wetlands, I'm fairly certain the answer is no.
Yes, through the mayor, to the mayor, yes, no plans, nothing in our official plan, no plans to extend through the wetland.
Right. Answer your question?
Great, and the second one is no too?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public wish to ask questions on matters on today's agenda? Hearing, seeing none, thank you. Moving on to delegations. Our first delegation, Income, Employment, and Homelessness Supports Division in the Social Services Department updates. We have Stella Dennis Papacasentino, Commissioner of Social Services from the Regional Municipality of Durham, and staff, probably. Please come forward. Thank you. I think we allow presentations 10-minute status, is that right? Okay. I know it says delegation, but we'll treat this as a presentation. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Ajax Council for having us present today. I am Lisa McIntosh, the Director of Income, Employment, and Homelessness Supports with the Region of Durham. And I have with me Sahar Furatani, who is the manager of our homelessness system.
Good afternoon. Homelessness is a growing global issue, affecting most cities in our community nationwide. However, the problem has become particularly noticeable in Ajax over the past 4 years. Ajax has seen an increase in individuals facing homelessness due to affordable housing shortage, mental health challenges and substance use, family breakdown, domestic violence, and personal crises. Regional leaders continue to advocate for more investment in deeply affordable housing, mental health services, and outreach programs.
It's just not showing up there.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Regional leaders continue to advocate for more investments in deeply affordable housing, mental health services, and outreach programs. Since the pandemic, Ajax community has faced increased challenges in addressing the needs of unsheltered individuals, with some, as mentioned above, being issues, as well as an increase in chronic homelessness. Despite regional's efforts to provide emergency shelters, winter warming space, the sharp increase in homelessness since the pandemic underscores the need for long-term sustainable strategic strategies to address homelessness in Ajax. As you can see here, since 2021, there has been a spike in our by name list. We started with 209 in 2021. To the end of December 2024, it has increased to 787. Of that 787, 80% of those individuals have mid to high acuity. And what that basically means that it takes much longer to address the needs of these individuals than it would if it was a much lower acuity. Ajax has been currently sitting at 167, and with that, 130 of those, which is 78%, are considered to be mid to high acuity. So again, falling within that average. The number of our by name list does fluctuate, so if you have been following it, you may have noticed a slight decrease over the past couple of months, but this is very typical as the months get a bit colder. So due to seasonal changes, individuals might be seeking indoor, so which would be considered hidden homelessness, couch surfing, and maybe staying with family and friends, as well as temporary disengagement. And it could also be as a result of not enough affordable housing, so individuals are staying within the shelter much longer than they would, as well as an enhancement in our outreach services, so we're able to connect individuals more with services within the community. The demographics for 2024 for Ajax, as you can see, we have 26% who have identified as female, 73 have identified as male, and 1% has identified as other. Within the age range, you're looking at about 74.3% that are within the age of 25 to 59. Individuals have also identified with Indigenous status, as well as you're looking at typically single individuals within the demographics of Ajax. Homelessness supports in Ajax, we currently have 2 shelters, Christian Faith Outreach Center, also known as CFOC, Doors of Compassion, which services 18 years and older, as well as Durham Youth Services, DYS, which is the youth population, 16 to 24. We have a homeless hub as well, so the Ajax Hub, which for the winter months we have opened 24 hours to allow individuals indoor, and this will be in effect until the end of March. As well as we have Housing First and community case management programs through our CFOC, Community Development Council of Durham, as well as Durham Youth Services. And as well, our outreach and support services, so Durham Region's outreach services, we've got our own Durham Region outreach team that is very active in the Ajax community, as well as the mental health outreach program, our MHOP, and primary care outreach program, PCOP. Since our outreach team hit the road in January of last year, we've been busy supporting the community in Ajax. We've had a total of 1,719 interactions, 145 group interactions with 3,096 people present. We've connected with 763 individual engagements, visited 57 encampments, with 119 people present. As well, we have spoken to 103 businesses and interactions with the public. Please note that these stats were collected as of the end of August. As well as we've had 298 warm referrals and collaborative service navigation supports, 78 service requests from Lake Ridge Health Hospital, and please note those stats are from June 2024, as well as 23 service requests from Durham Region Transit.
So in 2023, Durham Region launched the Integrated Homelessness System Action Plan. The plan is available on our website, and it guides Durham Region's strategic actions to meet pressing service needs and inform longer-term objectives related to increasing housing options and supports to help people access them. We know the needs represented in Ajax and across Durham are complex. Some of the accomplishments we have achieved through 2024 are driven by, well, all of our accomplishments are driven by the priorities and goals set out in the plan. Some of the ones that we've achieved in 2024 in the Ajax community specifically are our homeless system and services information sessions were presented and delivered to the Ajax Library, Ajax Fire, and Municipal Bylaw team, to name a few. Homelessness sector tables are also convened to look at homelessness across the region. They convene every 6 weeks and support and continuous improvement in the homelessness system. Sector tables include key agencies such as CDCD, CFOC, and Durham Youth Services. They all come together and develop solutions to address the demands in the community. Ongoing meetings with the Town of Ajax staff occur to strategize and work better together. Meetings include both management and frontline staff. The team also facilitates quarterly meetings with all of the local area municipalities with their bylaw teams, including Ajax, to discuss best practices and improve approaches towards addressing homelessness. In 2024, as Sahar shared, the new regional street outreach team began full operations. The team provides concentrated support and focus in Ajax due to demand. The team builds trusting relationships with people experiencing homelessness to connect them to services such as healthcare, shelter, and other human and health services that are needed. The team established a case conference committee with agencies, including CFOC, to support vulnerable people with complex needs. We implemented a coordinated access approach for winter warming across Durham Region, prioritizing transportation and maintaining communication to coordinate available spaces. January through March 2024, this supported the Ajax homeless population as no regionally funded centers were approved and opened in the region last winter, or in Ajax last winter. The region also launched a central email, homelesshelp@durham.ca. There's also a phone line, which is 311 extension 5510. This is to support and respond to inquiries related to homelessness. There have been 82 unique requests received from the Ajax community since October 1st, 2024. We continue to respond quickly. The outreach team does respond to inquiries on a 24/7 schedule. We're also working diligently to boost capacity in the system through the growth of housing supply. The Opening Doors program at CDCD was expanded in 2024 to increase landlord engagement and support options. This allows us to move people along the housing continuum. The homelessness system successfully housed 362 individuals in 2024. 68 of them were from Ajax. Durham Region continues to connect regularly with all local area municipalities to ensure that consistent and timely support is occurring. Coordinated efforts between the regional homelessness team and the town of Ajax, including bylaw officers and the fire department, occur to address homelessness encampments and discuss ways to ensure appropriate responses and resource sharing. We closely work with health service providers to improve access for people who are unsheltered. We work with Lakeridge Health to reduce hospital readmissions through community outreach and partnerships. In 2024, the Durham Paramedic Services and Durham Community Health Center mobile clinics began offering primary care in the community, and this is in addition to the mental health and addiction services that already existed within the system. The regional homeless team actively hosts or participates at community events, including many events within the Ajax area. The system also supports and works closely with the GAP Committee, ensuring that individuals with lived experience are included in our planning and work. The team is committed to working with local businesses. In 2024, presentations were offered at various business associations and networks across the region. The team is connecting with local businesses to share information and resources on how to support people who are homeless in their community and sharing information about available resources for them to have. Homelessness is not an isolated problem. It is a complex one, and it requires a coordinated, holistic approach involving all sectors and interested parties to create sustainable solutions. We work closely with numerous groups and organizations to plan and share resources and develop solutions. Local area municipalities work alongside us, sharing access to local buildings, parks, and other spaces to allow us to offer both services and host events. Durham Regional Police Services is an essential partner in our work. DRPS maintains safety and are the primary response agency if a crime is occurring. They need to be called to protect individuals involved. The regional homelessness team and community partners in the sector work closely with DRPS and other emergency services, following reporting processes whenever required. In Durham, we are grateful for our mobile clinics, as I shared earlier, and our primary care outreach program and other health care outreach programs that work in the community. Lakeridge Health Ajax is the local hospital here, providing care to individuals in need regardless of their housing status. Our team works closely with Lakeridge frontline and management teams to collaborate and bring human and health services together to support people in a coordinated way. The work to address homelessness is in progress and ongoing. Ongoing advocacy to improve rates of reporting within the health and justice systems is happening. Information on reporting processes and clarifying that homelessness services are voluntary. Social services cannot force anyone to come indoors and work with us. We have to build that trust with the people who need our services. In the Ajax community, the regional outreach team serves as a key access point for the by name list. It offers navigation of services and connects individuals to income support and other services, assisting them with housing readiness. Additionally, outreach plays a vital role in building trust and fostering relationships for individuals, encouraging them to come indoors and access essential services, reducing the anxiety and connecting people to systems that they have been removed from for far too long. We work with the CFOC team to increase available programming in this community, and we are partnering with Ajax and local organizations to explore new locations for homelessness supports. In 2025, specialized housing first workers to support veterans and Indigenous individuals, or people from the Indigenous community experiencing unsheltered homelessness will be onboarded. We know that 3% of Ajax by name lists are veterans. We also know that 9.6% of Ajax's by name list are individuals who identify as being Indigenous. Meeting these service needs are very important to the work that we're doing. So the last slide is I want to reiterate that we have the homeless helpline, and we really approach this service through coordinating options and responding on a 24/7 schedule. Our outreach team is monitoring the homeless help at durham.ca email overnight and will actively support people that have needs outside of regular business hours. This also allows us to increase communication logs and really increase our data integrity and knowing where complaints and concerns are coming from and where service needs are resulting from. So, thank you, and I will open it for questions.
Thank you for your delegation. Questions from council we have, starting with Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, and thanks for the presentation. I've been hearing on Regional Council for a while that there's going to be a formalized regional encampment strategy. Do we know when they'll be presented?
Yes. We're bringing forward the encampment strategy to Regional Council in March. And we've done extensive engagement with partners, including the local municipalities. Staff have received a draft copy for feedback back in December, and that feedback has been incorporated into the final version. We've also heard from legal, fire services, public health, libraries, other community partners, bylaw, and DRPS to offer information and do a review of the information provided in the upcoming strategy.
Okay, that's good to know. So 2 months from now, how is it going to be communicated to the overall public is the next step, right? I mean, it's always great that councillors receive it, but the public is the hardest way to reach to really kind of get them to buy into this. So what is your communication strategy going to look like?
So the initial rollout of the information will be to present it to Regional Council and have the documents circulated as part of a report. Then it'll be available on our website, and then we will start using it to inform all of the presentations that we're doing with different groups across the region. It really is a process that respects the approaches of the 8 different municipalities that we're working with locally and ensures that there's some clarity on how we move towards assisting those individuals in encampments.
How do you see this strategy benefiting the Ajax model, which you mentioned, we have 8 different municipalities, different approaches to this, and, we think we're unique in the overall scheme of things. How's it going to benefit us?
So here in Ajax, the strategy overall, it will provide initial direction that respects the different approaches of the local municipalities in working with people and living in encampments, their cars, and those with complex issues. What it will be is a starting point for when we're coming together in those quarterly meetings with the local area municipal bylaw, fire, and other services. When we come together, we will have a starting place and a document to build on and to be able to respond quickly and make changes where we need to be. Right now, we don't have an encampment strategy that's written down that brings us all together as a starting point.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. It's a very important subject. So can you confirm that the current lease for the 27 Station Street shelter, is it indeed up in 2027? I believe it expires in 2027, correct?
So the Station Street lease is between the region and Ajax, and my understanding is it does end in 2027.
Okay. And I know there's been discussions previously regarding the town's willingness to support a relocation of the structure. What are the region's short and long-term plans related to the operations of that facility?
So expanding shelter options is a priority for our system in general. So looking at that site and the beds that exist as a relocation is part of that plan. The 27 Station Street offers a warm space for 30 people to sleep at this point. The structure was not intended to be permanent, and moving the structure is not structurally or financially recommended for us. So we are looking at options that will be new and seeking that available space in the system.
Just one follow-up, if I may. Do you anticipate that this will be done by 2027? Like a relocation into an existing building or anything like that? Because 2027, as we know, is just 2 years away. It's coming very quickly. Has there been discussions like we need to get this done by 2027 by people at the region?
So we definitely see the urgency in maintaining 30 beds in our system and expanding them. And we continue to work with the town to relocate the beds. We are seeking both funding and working on development plans to build out additional beds within our system. Accessing space is not an easy task within the work that we do. And so we are looking at every possible option.
But you can't give me a date or a confirmation?
Absolutely, I cannot give you a date at this point.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, but look forward to hearing more on that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all the work that you do. I know it must seem like Groundhog Day. Every day gets up and it's exactly the same as the last day. And with very little movement towards, there is some successes, but still is a long ways to go. So I do appreciate that. The by name list, again, is a voluntary name that each individual has to volunteer to put their name on that list. So you have 787 on it right now. How many, do you roughly know outside of that list how many would be in our area? Not Ajax, but in Durham region right now. Would you have some idea?
We are awaiting the results of the point in time count that was completed back in the fall, but we know that all reported numbers are understated within the work that we do, and so we are analyzing all of our data to come up with numbers that are closer to what the service demands actually are.
Of the 787 on the by name list, how many of them would be eligible for housing or able to be in a home or a room?
So I think Sahar, when she was sharing stats, she shared that about 80% of the individuals on the by name list are mid to high acuity, so they would require some form of supportive housing with supports to successfully maintain housing, whether that's living in an independent setting with community supports accessible to them or a really formal supportive housing option.
And in Ajax, it's 70% of our 167 here currently that are on that list, like that would be in that category?
78%, so 130 of the individuals on the by name list in Ajax.
That would be in the mid to high acuity.
Correct.
Okay. So in January, shortly after New Year's, I received a call from and you know all my emails because I send them to you, with a manager that had had a violent situation happen within her store and was physically threatened herself. I went to see them and they were shaken, visibly shaken and crying, and are frustrated because they feel their voice no longer matters. The hub is in the wrong place. It needs to move because these businesses are directly affected by that right now. And they feel like no one is listening to them. And I well understand the rights of the unsheltered, but they feel that their rights now have no longer been heard or are cared for. And so at some point, we need to look at this because my understanding is that the individuals recently that have come into the hub area are much higher on the acuity list or scale than have been in the past. And we simply can't have people coming into stores and physically threatening people that work there that are only trying to make a living for their homes. So I don't know how we address this, but there is an other side to the coin in Ajax, and it needs to be looked at. And I don't know what to tell them. So I send the emails, I give the updates, but at the same time, I have no idea what to say to them to make them feel any better. It's not really a question, but I believe I have full compassion for what is being done. I'm not asking for you to move it out of Ajax, but the hub in the mall is causing more problems. And if the encampment strategy is now we don't move encampments, I don't know what the strategy looks like, but if that's what it is, then how do we explain that to people? Like it's fine to be able to put it on the website and all that, but our residents ask us, they're right there. And so, we do need to have a full public consultation on it. Now, I mean, it's not a consultation, but at least an education on it. And so I just wanted to voice my concerns and know that there is another voice out there that is feeling like they don't have any rights at all now.
Councillor Bauer, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you to Councillor Crawford and Councillor Lee for your comments and points. Well understood. And thank you, Ms. McIntosh and Sahar, for coming today and doing the presentation. Fantastic information that we all should hear and know about. So thank you for all that work and the work that you do to help the people who live in Durham Region and specifically Ajax, whether they have a home or not. It's much appreciated. So I do have some questions about some of the info on the slides. Slide 3 talks about there's 167 people on the by name list from Ajax. And then later on slide 8, it talks about in 2024, 68 people specifically from Ajax were housed. So is it simple math that we can now subtract 68 people from our by name, and now we are down to 99 of numbers that are being reported? Or what does that actually mean in the numbers game?
So there's constant inflow and outflow from our system. So each month that we're housing people, more people are arriving on the by name list. So the numbers that were shared would have been for December. Over the course of the year, 68 people from the by name list in Ajax were housed. As of December, 167 people would have been on the by name list in Ajax and actually on the by name list in December. So we can't just subtract and be like, we have 99.
Yeah.
The inflow is constant and consistent to the system.
Okay. And are stats also maintained for the people who are housed, who, for whatever reason, lose their housing? Are those stats kept too?
We do keep stats on recidivism, and if they were to flow back onto the by name list, they would be counted again, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then you also, there was a comment on slide 8 about, where's slide 8? Okay. Implementing a coordinated access approach for winter warming services across Durham Region, prioritizing transportation and maintaining communication to coordinate available spaces. And then the next bullet talks about this supported the Ajax homeless population as no regionally operated centers were approved. So what does that mean? There are, like, as far as non-approved?
Sure. So as part of the system, we are really looking at diversifying services so that we're not over-concentrating. And so last year, we did not open additional winter warming in Ajax. We opened it in the surrounding communities, and we supported people to move to those. So Pickering had winter warming. We had opened additional spaces at our regional headquarters in Whitby. So it could be that an individual from this area would have been transported in the evening to one of those sites. And then if in the morning when the center was closing, they would choose to return to their own community, we would also facilitate that support so that they could get back to where they're familiar with or where they wanted to go, rather than applying more pressure and opening more spaces in the area where we had received concern and we knew that we already had the shelter beds, emergency shelter beds available. So there was no expansion here last winter.
Okay, all right, thank you. How many outreach teams does the region have, and where are they all based? And I ask that question because with Ajax being, you know, the number 2 on the by name list and the beds and shelters, is it possible to have one of those outreach teams based in Ajax, similar to how the police have a, you know, a little sub-hub that they work out of? Then there's no need for transportation time, et cetera, where often you will hear some of the complaints that by the time outreach comes, the circumstances have changed completely.
So the outreach team is here on every shift, and they have been stationed here as part of our winter warming
Great.
planning.
Okay.
So we, at this time, have 12 full-time regular outreach workers making up 6 teams, but we also have some additional temporary staff at the moment. So those teams are circulating around the clock. There are always outreach staff. It could be, though, if Ajax is, if it's a slower day here or there is a intense complaint from another community, the team will need to leave and return. But we have made a conscious effort of scheduling and ensuring that there is a concentration of outreach workers here close to the Hub Plaza, whether that's in our office and then coming across to spend time at the back end of the hub, or actually within the hub now that it's open and operational for winter warming.
Okay, great. That's good to know. I didn't know that. Thank you. You also mentioned 82 unique requests from Ajax on slide 8 to the homeless help at durhams.ca or the phone line, which I think it's great that it's being used. So unique requests, that's 82 different ones. Maybe are you able to give some examples of what you're hearing from our residents in Ajax, these requests?
They really do vary. So they can be an individual calling in to say they need service or they need assistance. It would be right across Ajax. Sometimes the calls to our homeless help can include things like I am facing or pending eviction. And then the additional calls would be, they could be coming through town staff or council, but they can also come from the public. So an incident in a local store or concerns about an individual who may be not well and physically unwell and on the sidewalk. And so then the team will go out and coordinate and navigate services to ensure the right services is there. If it's a violent incident, DRPS is our go-to to ensure. Our outreach team, again, works with people who volunteer to work with them and have the services in place. We have to build that trust. We do not have the authority to apprehend or force service. So we navigate that very carefully, involving health service providers and emergency services who have the ability to navigate the justice system and apprehend as needed.
Okay, great. So there is a role or a connection. I noticed you mentioned DRPS in one of the lines, but I think there's a relationship there that definitely you guys need to help each other.
Oh, absolutely. And outreach, although building relationships with individuals, are consistently reporting to and working with with emergency services who have that ability to work with people who are higher acuity and their work falls outside of our social services priorities and fits within the justice or health service systems.
Okay, great, thank you. And my last question is related to some of, what's permitted or not, and it's about drug use, open drug use or paraphernalia, which I am not saying that only homeless people use drugs, because we know that's not true. And I am not saying that all homeless people use drugs, because we also know that's not true. But in the concentrated area of the downtown plaza specifically, where there are constant reports of needles or drug paraphernalia, that is a common occurrence that we speak to staff about, and there are resources for sure to be used. But is there a plan, or can the region speak to how you can help us mitigate those factors in 2025?
Sure. So outreach also supports cleanup when it is required or they're finding items in the community. The Durham Region is the system manager for housing and homelessness. So in that role, we coordinate shelter and housing services. That does include support services across Durham. But we really do need to be clear that there are many others who are involved in a response to really address and stop the illegal activity that results as part of addiction. So that's outside of our legislative role. We cannot, again, enforce individuals who are actively using drugs in a public place to move along or to address that. That would be part of our justice system again. So there are definitely some unhoused residents who have addictions challenges, and the region does connect them using outreach as that relationship building piece to bring on site, Pinewood Center for Addiction, mental health and addiction counselors, and others. We do support people to transition into recovery programs, but it does come with a level of readiness for our work.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much. And I just want to make a comment about Councillor Crawford and the need to relocate. So, that there's a downtown vision or a town vision for the development of that downtown area. So I think those discussions, I'm sure they're already well in place, but there certainly would be some speed, I guess, to consider, because eventually that area will be redeveloped and there will not be those locations available. So just a comment. And those are my questions. Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you so much, Ms. McIntosh.
You're welcome. Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation here today through the chair. So just to establish a few things before I ask as part of my question, the region is holding the portfolio for the homelessness. This is not something at a municipal level, correct? Correct. So when folks say to us, well, the town of Ajax has put this organization here, CFOC, or any other operator, that is not correct. I just want to clarify that. That came through the region. That did not come through the municipality.
Well, and we work with service providers and fund, but we actually don't necessarily set up and arrange for where a community service provider exists if they own their space or they are locate it somewhere. They're offering a service, and so we're purchasing that service. But we are working alongside them to ensure contract compliance and the work that we need is happening.
Thank you. So there have been some previous conversations and about potential developments or land acquisitions related to the shelter, transitional and support housing. This has been in the past, and I'm just wondering what we're looking at for the future here in Ajax through the region. Have you looked at land acquisitions specifically in the downtown core, and what does that look like?
So land acquisitions would go through regional council, and there would be reports that would go related to the purchase of the property, and that process would be very involved and complex. I am not aware of a report that has gone public or been part of council discussions around any land acquisitions.
Let me rephrase this a different way. Not necessarily gone public, but I guess what I'm asking is within your department, have there been any discussions for Ajax, in particularly for any type of land acquisitions or land that you already own in and around this area where you could be moving the services to and or building a new facility? Have there been discussions within your department?
So we are planning on, part of our priorities is to expand shelter and housing services across the region. That's a comprehensive planning process. So really it's starting by looking at our regional properties, what we have access to and facilities that are available. Funding new projects and new spaces requires substantive funding approvals as well as zoning approvals and other pieces. So those projects will all get reviewed and be shared as part of expansion processes within the region. And there are a number of housing developments that are available on our website, including the 1635 Dundas project, which would include supportive and transitional housing.
But that, sorry to interrupt you because I have limited time. That project in particular was already, that facility was already there and you purchased it and you're making good use of it. I'm referring to blank land, no building, something that you're planning on building in Ajax. And I reference this in particular because of the land across the street from the library. It's my understanding the region owns that. So I'm asking specifically, because I'm a local councillor, not a regional councillor. I don't sit on the region. I'm not going to see those reports. I'm not going to hear about it until it comes on an agenda or after the fact when something's been voted on. So I'm asking specifically, is there something planned for that land across the street? Is there something planned for one of these four corners in the area? Do we know of any of that?
So that land, as regional land, would be part of the review that is
sorry.
occurring
I'm
on
gonna interrupt
housing
here.
renewal and
Ms.
redevelopment.
McIntosh, I'm going to
Sure.
interrupt here. Councillor Henry, the answer is yes.
Yes?
Yes, that's the answer to your question.
Oh,
There
thank
have been
you.
discussions about that parcel. I have no idea how you know about that because we have not had a conversation, but the answer is yes.
Okay.
Next question.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
my other question would be related to properties that are rent-to-gear properties in Ajax that are owned by the region and vacancies. I don't know if you could speak to this or not, but I know that, for instance, there are some buildings where there was some units being redone and they had sat for a while, like 655 Harwood Avenue South. And I'm just wondering, has that become a priority, like in this housing market, in this homelessness situation? Does that become a priority for getting those properties back on the market to accommodate that list of folks that are waiting for it and accommodate the homelessness?
So viable, safe space for people to live is a priority absolutely in the region. It would be part of our 10-year housing plan that's being redeveloped. And it might be a good next step. Homelessness team is really here and offers support services and services around shelter and supportive housing into transitional housing, but it might be a good next step if there are questions about the region's housing renewal plan and development plans to have a housing team and a team back that can really focus in on those questions for you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time here today.
Next, Councillor Dice.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and having the presentation today, which is very helpful. And just want to extend my appreciation for the outreach workers and what you're doing in social services on this housing. It's not simple. I attended recently, there was a conference on homelessness across Canada and FCM as well. And I have to say that we're very ahead of the game as to how other communities are addressing the needs. So my one concern is basically interim housing before they get into that interim housing. So you have a lot of encampments or people still in tents because we don't have the ability to serve them indoors. And there are other communities that have got this modular housing or these cabin housings, which has heating and a locked door, which means that they're safer from fire incidents and also can keep their belongings, in a safe place. Is that something we're going to consider here in Durham region? And particularly here in Ajax, where we really need that.
So in our planning process, no ideas are off the table. We explore every one. Those plans for communities that are tiny home or modular communities. In Durham, we have the 10 micro home units that were set up in 2020, I think, and operational. We are always looking at additional plans and doing business cases and plans around funding, feasibility, and approvals for different projects. So those do come together and get moved forward with go through regional council. So no ideas off the table, but there is planning and operations and ongoing operational funding that would be attached to projects of that nature.
I think the benefits are, it addresses some of the concerns that neighborhoods have regarding homeless, the mess, that kind of thing. And it also builds that community. And that was the other thing as well. I have previous knowledge working with CDCD years ago, and we're going back 30 years, and I can tell you for a fact that when the pit count was done then, and is still being done today, that we had the highest number, second to Oshawa, of homelessness people. So when we're looking at homelessness across Durham, are you looking at relocating or amalgamating some of the municipalities? Because I see that could be problematic.
So we really look at the region as a whole. And so you don't want to create new hotspots or concentrated areas. So it is a comprehensive planning process where we take all of the local priorities into consideration, but we plan out for the people who are our focus, those needing the services that we offer.
Well, that's good to know, because like I say, the population has always been here, always. And it's always been centered around that plaza because that's where you can go and get things that you need. So that isn't going away anytime soon. And I don't know if leasing land is also an option that the region would look at for such an encampment.
We look at every option, but funding, right now, with the economics the way it is, funding is always a consideration for projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that ends my list of council. I have a few questions, and it's been good conversation. First, I want to follow up on Councillor Tyler Moran's about the lease in 2027, because I didn't hear so does that mean you are not looking to review the lease in 2027 at this point? You're looking for other options instead?
We definitely are looking to review the lease. Our understanding from conversations with staff in the town is that the space is not available after 2027. So if that is different and we're looking to work between real estate teams to lengthen that time frame, it is always an opportunity. The community need is not getting less.
Okay, thank you. Do you track on the by name list where the people come from? So the 167 or whatever it is in Ajax, are they all from Ajax, or have they come here from Toronto or Oshawa or Ottawa?
By nature of the community, there is a mobility that occurs across individuals seeking service. Many of the individuals I've met within the region of Durham may have even started here in their early years and then moved across the country and come back. So we are always looking at our demographics and information. It's not like a key item on the by name list, which is the HIFIS, which is fed through the HIFIS system that was set up by the federal government. But we are always considering that information. Within each community, though, there's quite a segment of individuals that when you talk to them have gone to high school or elementary school within their communities, and then we have additional people who move. The same as we would in our housed community, right? Some of us may have been in Durham for a very long period of time, and some of us may have grown up in other communities and come here to settle.
But do you track it?
We try to.
Okay.
So with this community, it is hard to collect their background information because sometimes they don't feel safe providing it.
Okay. I'm asking this because, I mean, looking at Ajax at 167, and it's so much higher than Pickering at 22, Clarington at 30, and even Whitby at 105. I mean, we are the third highest population in the region the third highest population in the region. However, we're the very smallest in land size. So I find those numbers a little bit out of whack. I'm wondering, are there shelters I know there's shelters in Ajax, Oshawa, and Whitby, but are there shelters in Pickering and Clarington?
So there are not, which means there's a limited, so now with outreach and working with some of our community agencies in those communities, we've increased the capacity to add names to the by name list in those communities. And so we are seeing the number go up. I think 2 years ago when I started working on this, Pickering was reporting 6 people who were homeless through the by name list. But that number is increasing. So as access points and our data integrity increases, we will see others' numbers go up as well. Somebody could get added to the by name list here in Ajax and present as an Ajax number, but they may be living outdoors in Pickering or another area of the region and coming here for service. But again, do not want to tell us where they're staying overnight because that could jeopardize the security or safety they find in that space.
So this is kind of where I'm going with this, because I know Oshawa obviously has the highest number by far, and they've had facilities to address things like addiction. You mentioned Pinewood Center. I think they have several shelters, not just one. I don't know for sure, but they have at least one. And they've had it for a lot longer than the Ajax and Whitby shelters were open. It's looking to me that the 3 municipalities that have shelters have the highest amount. And if I correlate that out, that tells me that if you have a shelter, you are going to be attracting all the homeless from the other municipalities. That's what these numbers look like. Is that a fair assessment?
Or shelters are established where the demand is. So I can tell you before we had a shelter in Whitby, we were actively engaged in working with encampments and a very active unsheltered population in the community.
Okay, well, if I look at your second slide, it says the problem has become particularly noticeable in Ajax over the last 4 years. So I don't have the numbers in front of me from 4 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that the 167 in Ajax is several multiples, and by my numbers, about 500% higher than those that have grown in Pickering and Clarington. So that leads me to believe that if you provide the facilities and the services, we're creating a bigger problem in our municipality. That's what these numbers tell me. Am I completely wrong, or is that, because I'm just going by the math?
So I guess we can kind of work back and forth on assumptions around the data, but it doesn't necessarily, where we've opened a facility, does not necessarily show an attraction of new individuals. The group in Whitby that moved into the Whitby shelter were primarily from the Whitby warming sites and known to the Whitby community. So it hasn't engaged a higher number of people. We're just actually being able to count and work with the individuals that exist. So do some people come for service? Yes. But are the high attraction numbers necessarily because Ajax has attracted all of those individuals from other communities? No, we are collecting your data much better than we are in some other communities because we have CFOC as a data entry point, we have CDCD, we have our outreach team, and we have PCOP, who are all collecting data actively in Ajax and have been for the last 4 years. Other communities have only been onboarded in the last 12 months. So we should see their data also increase substantially in the next while.
Okay, well, if you look at the lease, and I remember this for the shelter across the road because I signed it and I had this put in, I specifically had a condition put in there that it be for Ajax homeless. So I don't know if that's being adhered to or not, those 30 beds, but that was the intent. I don't complain about something without bringing a solution, so we have a problem. We reached out to the region, I believe, and maybe, I don't know, CEO Baker can correct me on this, but I think we offered that facility at the time because there was a need. And from what I can see, and Councillor Bauer talked about it quite a bit, others, knowing the costs that not just us, all municipalities are experiencing, like I wrote a few things, drugs, crime, litter, intimidation, vandalism, encampments, everything else. How do we explain and justify this to our residents? That originally I thought this might be a short-term solution, but it appears we're making a problem potentially worse by continuing this in our municipality. My own opinion. So people are looking to me for answers. What do I tell them?
This problem is growing across our communities, across the nation. It's complex, and more people need these services as our economics get more and more challenging for those living in poverty. We're seeing it with food banks, homelessness, those on social assistance, and people seeking employment. Housing is becoming quite elusive to individuals that are not making a living wage, and even some of those who are.
Fair enough. Thank you for your delegation. I don't see any other members of council on the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation, the 2024 Ajax Partnership Fund Final Report and 2025 Ajax Partnership Fund Projects. Liam Nichols, Grants and Strategic Initiatives Coordinator. Liam, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I will be brief, but I'm excited to bring this forward to council again to highlight our 2024 projects that we did through the Ajax Partnership Fund, as well as introduce the 2025 projects that we will be doing, or are already doing because we've started. It's already 2025. Happy New Year. So we will launch right into it. Just for some acknowledgements, I wanted to acknowledge all the applicants that applied this year. We had, I believe, 130 applications received. While there were many unique and creative ideas for consideration, as always, we could only pick a subsection of that. So those are the recipients you'll be hearing about today, as well as the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. Of course, all funding for the Ajax Partnership Fund comes from our contribution agreement through Casino Ajax. So what is the Ajax Partnership Fund? I'm sure you all know, of course, but as a refresher, it's a means for the towns to advance our strategic priorities as they're defined by council through grants to external partners. So each year we have $250,000 made available. That funding is granted out to organizations that we feel are doing things that we'd like to see move forward. As I mentioned, the funding is entirely funded through non-tax revenue, and it allows the town to provide funding to initiatives which we feel are timely and responsive to changing conditions or significant to the community. So each year we kind of do a reevaluation of what we'd like to see and approve on that basis. So for 2024, I'm not going to go through every project, but I will give you a summary and then pull some highlights for you. We allocated $15,000 to high school robotics teams and supported the scientists in the school STEM workshops, advancing education. We celebrated diversity in the community through resilient rhythms during our Black History Month. We supported a multicultural event at the St. Francis Center, and we also helped to host Islamic Heritage Month in October. We have enhanced community health in Ajax by expanding Alzheimer's programs, supported a nutrition and cooking program for adults with disabilities, and invested in new equipment at the hospital. We upgraded the Legion Hall with energy-efficient LED lighting. And to support community safety, we enabled a mobile food and basic needs depot, funded safety initiatives through the Roadwatch Group, Paramarine Search and Rescue, and we launched a microgrant program for Plaza business owners as well. So here's the breakdown of the allocation. As I mentioned, it's $250,000 a year. So $230,000 was allocated to partnership fund projects. $10,000 was broken out into that micro grant that I mentioned. And we also had $10,000 for bursaries at Ajax Shining Star. Here are the key performance indicators from 2024. So each project has to report against these indicators. They have additional indicators that they can choose based on what they're doing, but these are the ones that we require. So this year, 130 Ajax businesses were served in some way, whether that's items were purchased from them through a project or they directly benefited in another way. 10,614 Ajax residents attended events, took parts in programs, were engaged in the initiative in one way or another. 141 businesses were served in all of Durham, so same thing, but looking Durham-wide. And 24,996, 4 off from 25,000. Durham residents were helped by projects funded through the Ajax Partnership Fund. Lastly, 1,190 public-facing communications came from projects that we helped to fund, getting the news about what we were doing out there. So I'm not going to go through these in too much detail. You have the slides, you can review them. This year we helped the Ajax Pickering Hospital Foundation. They purchased some equipment for cancer staging and treatment, which helped to reduce recovery times. And we have a lovely quote there from the Director of Surgery, Heather Lithgow. The Ignite Durham Learning Foundation received a grant from us to help support some of the mobile food work that they do in Ajax, which specifically supports diverse families in the town who are facing food insecurity as they're trying to attend school. And again, we have a quote from Emily Collins. Looking back into the future is a Black History Month conference that takes part in Ajax. 2024 was its 9th annual rendition of this, and so we were pleased to partner with them once again to bring it to the St. Francis Center and to celebrate the very important month of Black History Month. And Shannon, who is lovely, I'm sure many of you know her, provided this wonderful quote, and leave that there. I will say that before we go into 2025, one of the focuses this year, now that we have 2 years under our belt, is to help celebrate some of these good news stories more. So throughout the year, you will see more communications about the actual projects themselves from the people undertaking them in their own words, as well as more examples of what the funding is actually helping to accomplish in our community. The goal with doing that is to get more people to apply with bigger and better projects as we go down. Speaking of bigger and better projects, we'll get started with our 2025 grouping. So this year we are making a grant of $50,000 to the Alzheimer's Society of Durham Region. I mentioned that in 2024 we had a smaller collaboration with them. This will build upon that collaboration, and I wish I could share much more information. It is a multi-partner project, so we are still working through negotiations with other partners. So they've asked us to keep this confidential at the moment, but what I can say is that through this funding, we're hopeful that the Alzheimer's Society will have a more permanent presence in Ajax, a larger footprint in Ajax, and be able to work with more of our community partners in an expanded way. So there will be more on that shortly, hopefully. The Ajax Pickering Hospital Foundation will again be receiving a grant of $25,000, this time for their emergency department to help measure key health indicators as people come in, such as blood pressure and oxygen levels. The Ignite Durham Learning Foundation, again, in 24, we had a smaller partnership with them. This year, we're providing funding to help also give them a more permanent footprint in Ajax. They currently have a depot in Oshawa. We're hopeful that with this funding, we'll see a more permanent hub established in Ajax as well to help service the other end of Durham Region, Ajax and Pickering, and will be the center of that service. Community Development Council Durham, we're providing just shy of $12,000 for a pilot after-school program aimed at youth who are experiencing family housing precarity or homelessness. This funding will provide mentorship, life skills, trauma-informed counseling, recreational activities, and is a partnership between ourselves, the library, and CDCD. I always get that acronym mixed up. Scientists in the School is receiving $10,000. We've partnered with them for a number of years, so we're excited to keep this project going to provide free STEM workshops. We get a lot of great feedback on this from the schools themselves, who are excited to be able to bring this programming at no cost to their classes. Durham Summerfest is a cultural diversity and inclusion event with a focus on South Asian representation. So we are partnering with them this year to bring the festival to Ajax, and we're looking forward to that. The Charles H. Best Diabetes Center will be receiving $10,000. This is a commitment that we've made, or that's an ongoing commitment that we're providing towards their Building on the Best campaign. So they've identified for us how much of their services are used by Ajax residents, and we're helping to fund the expansion of the program to meet the demand that exists from Ajax residents with type 1 diabetes. Pride Durham, of course, is a returning project for us. The annual Pride Parade in Durham Region takes place in Ajax, so we obviously want to keep that here and celebrate that in our community. The Ajax Partnership Fund allows us to do that by providing them with annual funding to be here in the town, as well as support through our departments as they take on that parade. I did list projects under $10,000 in a table format. Again, I'm not going to run through all of these for you just because there are 23 in this category, but I would invite you to read through them. I'm happy to answer questions if you do have any on the individual projects. But as you can see, we're doing a lot this year, and we'll be tracking and monitoring all of these projects as we have done. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Great timing. Councillor Lee, you're first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Nichols, for the presentation. Do we have to spend the money in this specific way? So this is casino revenue. So is there something mandated in the bylaws that say specifically we have to kind of give this money back to the community?
I would have to go back to the agreement. I don't have that handy on me. Christy's saying yes, it does.
And then just hypothetically, because I was having a conversation about this, if we decided to say, oh, we actually want to use this money to reduce property taxes because that is benefiting the community, can we use it that way, or it has to be used kind of in this prescriptive manner?
Correct. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Through the chair to Regional Councillor Lee, yes, that's correct. So we have an agreement with OLG that mandates that a portion, well, to Liam's point, we'll have to look back at exactly what that portion is, but the funds do need to be reinvested into the community. There is a dollar figure on that of what we receive, and then the remainder is managed through our finance policies for funding our reserves and other things like that.
And then the wording is very specific, I'm guessing, as to what reinvesting into the community looks like.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It has to, it specifically speaks to community benefit. And so the OLG has, especially the last couple of years, been really key on attending events and doing announcements with us. And that's part of their public affairs team.
Okay. Back to Mr. Nichols. After someone has completed, we gave them money, they completed their project, is there a post-mortem that they have to fulfill?
Yeah, so we do ask for reporting throughout the life of the project. So from the start date till the end date, we require some form of reporting. We do follow up at the end of the project to understand what worked well, what didn't work well, and try to meet the objectives that they'd set at the start, understand if they've met them or not. Yeah, that's kind of the process that we follow at the moment.
Has there ever been an instance where someone has not done that post-mortem?
There have been instances where we've not received final reporting. We do keep that on file and a record of it. And if they do approach us again, either looking for more funding or wanting to partner again, we will ask that reporting be completed.
Okay, good. So it's not like if they can just not do their homework, so to speak, and still get the money. We kind of expect a certain level of transparency in terms of documentation.
That's correct, yeah. And we've never received no reporting. I will say that. We have at least gotten something in hand. But if we're not receiving that final reporting, we do follow up.
So timeline-wise, we always take intake, I think, around August, September, and then by December, it's, in a sense, all allocated, correct?
That's correct.
Have we ever thought about doing, and there's more work for you, but like 2 sessions, so one in the fall, one in the winter, so that we're able to capture maybe projects that weren't formulated at the time or weren't realized at the time that may need our funding?
We're following the procedure that's in place at the moment.
Sure.
We're obviously considering changes to the program as we come to the end of the 4-year term of the Ajax Partnership Fund. So that's something that we will be considering, is how we can capture kind of those in-between projects. We do
Right.
get a lot of requests outside of that window. Luckily, it's not a long window most of the time. By the time approvals come out in December, January, you're looking at August for the next application. That's generally fine for most projects that I've seen.
And this is year 2 of 4, is that it?
This current year is year 3.
Year 3, so next year will be the last year.
Yes, I believe it's aligned with council.
Perfect. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely.
Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you so much, Mr. Nichols. I'm really happy about this report and seeing our, what we are able to do to help through this partnership fund. So, and I noticed on your listing of under 10,000, at least one recipient who had been declined previously. So I'm really encouraged to see that people are not giving up, and that just because you've been turned down once, that doesn't mean you'll always be turned down. So thank you very much for that. And I'm sure you help them learn what needs to be done. So, but I do have a question about the allocation being Ajax-centric. Do we have caps on what, like how much money do we approve? Is there a weighting on what stays in our community versus what goes out to the region?
The preference is always that it benefit Ajax. I wouldn't say that there's a specific weighting on that, but it is one of our criteria that we use.
Okay.
And so even to qualify for funding, there has to be some tie to the community. It has to benefit residents, the organization has to be here, there has to be evidence that this funding will support the Ajax community. So no project has funded something that's gone exclusively out of the community to benefit nobody here. We do try to prioritize projects that will benefit Ajax first and foremost.
Great, thank you. And out of 130 apps, what would you say would be the percentage approved, if you know this, if you don't, that stayed within our community, to 100%?
I would say 100%, only because they have gone through that hurdle of having to benefit Ajax. Do you mean like where the money is spent, or?
I
or
guess out of
people-
the applicants, are you seeing the majority of applicants are for?
the applicants themselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
are Ajax applications.
I would say probably 75 or 80% are in Ajax, but the projects that they're doing are located in Ajax or are helping Ajax.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you
No
so
problem.
much.
Councillor Henry?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm noticing under the $10,000 mark, I wanted to ask, is that funding directly that was given to the applicants, or can that be in lieu of a rental space that you're listing the amount and it would equivalate to the funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. The funding listed here is cash contribution, so it wouldn't include in-kind support.
So there would be another list, I take it, for folks that we have given rental space to in lieu of this type of funding as well, correct?
That's correct, and we do track that information as well.
Okay, and for the folks at home, like we've already established that this is something that we have set up as a parameter, an agreement with OLG. But if these things weren't in place and we weren't doing them, especially the community groups that we're partnering with, then we would have a void, correct, within our community for these type of projects to exist.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We do hear from partners in other municipalities that don't have a similar program how much they wish they had it, just because of the number of asks that they get throughout the year. So it is a beneficial program and one that helps us support those groups.
Thank you. And I'm hearing, just so you know, like I've had a few applicants that have reached back to me that, again, we're not successful last time around, that we're successful. Very excited about the funding they got and what they're going to do with it. So my understanding is, like, for some of these bigger projects that we're funding, we would literally have to hire a specific coordinator to do these type of things through the town, whereas these community groups are filling that void, and that's important for our community. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you for your time. Good presentation.
Councillor Dice?
Well, thank you. It's a great example of building community because it changes constantly. But I had a question, and it's going back a number of years when we were talking about the investment into the community and how much money can has to go back. There was a situation years back where the United Way was not representative of all of Durham, and Ajax and Pickering had a United Way, which we both paid for. When that changed, I was under the understanding that that money would go back into the community. Is that part of this fund?
I'm afraid I don't have the background on that. I'm not sure if somebody else would.
Because it was a significant amount.
Originally it was.
Yeah. We
Oh.
changed.
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, it might be the Ajax Community Fund, I forget what it's called. Ajax Community Foundation, there we go. So when the Ajax Partnership Fund was launched 3 years ago, it was determined that the funds would be kept, all new OLG funds would be invested into the community directly by town staff. Over the years, there was a portion of those funds that were committed to the Ajax Community Fund, and I think the way it worked is 50% of those funds were given as cash contributions at the door, and 50% were retained in an investment portfolio that was then doled out on an annual basis. So when we made this move away from providing a direct contribution to the fund, we worked with them and kind of indicated of our preferences of the way that those funds that we had previously contributed would continue to be spent for Ajax-specific funding. But as it's been a couple of years, I think it might be worth just checking in, because I know the fund used to do a presentation to council annually, and now that it's being mentioned, I'm recalling that that has not happened in a couple of years. So that's a great follow-up for staff to check in with them and see what the status of those funds are.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add a little bit to that, Joanne, I think we used to give, it was when we had a separate Ajax United Way and a separate Pickering United Way, and we gave, I think it was 28 cents per household or something out of our tax base, and I think it was 125,000 a year. And when Ajax and Pickering amalgamated to create Durham United Way, we created another thing, and I think that was part of what the 125,000 a year to the hospital was, because we gave, right. And then we had Impact Ajax, and now we have this. So it's morphed a little bit over the years, but it's a similar amount. It's actually doubled, I think, from what we used to do. Now, do you want to get back in before I ask my questions?
Thank you for that. So I guess my concern is as to how much specifically goes back into the community, rather than somebody saying, hey, we've got to pay off this debt or that debt, or use it for something else. So that was my overall concern with that.
I think Ms. Brownridge said she didn't know the number off the top of her head, but she can probably get it and let council know what the actual percentage is, right?
Through the chair, and that would be specific to the Ajax Community Fund number. In terms of the $250,000 that we provide every year through the program, that is directly invested into those Ajax initiatives. So there's no just kind of cash that is used for things that we don't explicitly approve, at least to our knowledge. So it's for events, initiatives that are directly invested.
Just, mine's very easy. I just wonder why, and I think the number is 141 Durham businesses were served, but only 130 Ajax businesses were served last year.
That's a great question. I don't have that exact information on hand. It depends on how the recipient would have interpreted that or how they were counting those numbers. So they may have purchased things from businesses that weren't in Ajax and counted that number. I can go back in and try to interrogate that a bit more, especially as part of this year's program. We're just starting on reporting, so we can dig for more details, but I don't have that handy.
Okay, I did notice the numbers for the number of Durham residents serviced was in the 25,000 range, and Ajax was, I think, the 11,000 range. And I get that because people come here to attend these events, but I do want to ensure that these funds stay in Ajax and especially assist Ajax businesses. Is there something that we can put in this that says that those products that these groups are purchasing should be more Ajax-centric?
We couldn't require it, but we could look at making recommendations or finding a way to connect them with our business development team to promote Ajax businesses. But I don't think that we could include that as a term of their agreement.
No, it's a bit of a stretch. Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. Nothing further. Thank you for your delegation. Next presentation, we had the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force update. Cassandra Brownridge, Manager of Strategic Affairs, and Yasmin Bell, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Yasmin Bell, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, as well as a staff liaison for the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force. And I'm just here today to introduce our co-chair, Chantal Vernon, to present the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force 2025 work plan. As you may remember, they were back here in September with a draft plan. So today we've come with a finalized plan through community consultation over the last few months. And I'm very excited to help support that work. So thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin, and hello, everybody, and good afternoon. My name is Chantal Vernon. I am the co-chair for the Anti-Racism Task Force here in Ajax. And as Yasmin clearly highlighted, the last time we were here was last year to present the draft work plan. And since then, we have taken steps to implement some of our actions, as well as solidifying some of our goals, our short-term and long-term goals. And so today what I will share is really going over the purpose and mandate of our task force, as well as our short-term, long-term goals, how we kind of reach to solidifying our work plan, as well as some of our next steps. So the purpose of the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force is really dedicated to addressing systemic racism and hate faced by racialized communities here in the town of Ajax. And this is done through a hub and spoke model. And this model allows for a comprehensive approach to anti-racism while aligning with the town's Action 26 strategic plan. And this is a proactive approach that emphasizes continuous community engagement and feedback as a core component to our work plan. And so our task force works collaboratively with the town's diversity, equity, inclusion staff, community stakeholders, and relevant partners to ensure that anti-racism framework is implemented in alignment with the Ontario Human Rights Code. And so the goal is to center these voices and advocate for a progressive change and raise awareness of the need of transformation within Ajax. And so our mandate is we are a council, we're an endorsed committee of council, and we operate in alignment with the terms of reference. And the task force role is to advise council and implement a comprehensive work plan detailing recommendations to raise awareness and address structural and systemic and interpersonal racism, as well as hate that is faced by residents within the town of Ajax. And so here is a picture of some of our members. Our task force does comprise of 10 members. We do have a council liaison, Sterling Lee, as well as our town liaison, Yasmin. And an important component of the work that we do is really being present and active and visible within the community. Community building and relationships is extremely important, being able to engage with the community, to hear what they are experiencing, just to talk to people and to let people really know what the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force is all about. So this picture just shows some of the events that we've attended, some of the events that we've hosted, and that we'll continue to do as we progress with our work plan. We'll continue to build our community engagement strategy as well. So the task force has developed short-term and long-term goals. I won't necessarily go through all of them in detail, but we do have 10 short-term goals. And it's really focusing on partnering with organizations and departments within the town of Ajax to develop information and awareness sessions about anti-racism. We want to also create awareness campaigns that uses people's lived experiences to also raise awareness. So that's really being able to capture those stories from our residents to be able to share amongst the town. Also identify and build partnerships with other existing diversity, equity, inclusion organizations and groups, such as, the Durham Task Force. Also, we have worked on existing initiatives such as Ajax for All and the Diversity Exchange, and maybe many of you have seen it advertised on our local buses, and also some of our activities that we've done with Diversity Exchange. Update the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force terms of reference is one of the activities that we're going to do, and provide recommendations to engage the community partners on actionable recommendations about the town's plans, and also promote and advocate for funding opportunities to support youth engagement and programming for our BIPOC communities, which is Black, Indigenous people of color, to broaden the impact. Also, one key component that we really want to kind of focus on is identify gaps in workforce data and in workforce census data, and recommend actionable strategies to enhance equitable hiring practices and policies, and internal promotion processes and career advancement opportunities for racialized employees working at the town of Ajax. And this is important that we focus on this point, because it's important that the town of Ajax staff is reflective of the community that you do serve. And so that is one of our focus areas, as well as supporting the town's commitment to mandatory anti-oppressive and anti-racism training for all employees. We want to also collaborate with business leaders to identify any systemic barriers in any of their hiring and internal promotion practices, and provide resources and recommendations to them as well, and develop and implement engagement strategies that really highlight and spotlight BIPOC owned businesses, so that again is Black, Indigenous people of color, to gain greater support and awareness within the community. We also have 6 long-term goals. And so really quickly, we want to advocate to Ajax Regional Council members on priority areas such as social housing challenges, homelessness, and mental health. That's really important. We want to emphasize the need for increased representation of racialized and underrepresented individuals within the region, which is one of the short-term goals that I've already highlighted, and provide recommendations that align with the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force work to regional service providers, just to ensure that they are residents-focused and culturally informed. We also want to recommend funding for grassroots initiatives. We want to host and participate events with racialized communities to celebrate the diverse experiences and cultures within Ajax, and create inclusive spaces that encourage cross-community collaborations to foster meaningful conversations and understanding. So one of the things that we did that was really important was we engaged our community through community consultation, which were done in 2 ways. So we had an online survey that was available for 3 weeks for residents to be able to provide their feedback to the draft work plan that was posted on the website, as well as we held an in-person consultation with the community members, which was attended by 43 residents. And this really involved the task force members who facilitated roundtable discussions with our community about capturing their perspectives and lived experiences, as well as they were able to further inform our work plan and solidify our short-term, long-term goals and actions to achieve those goals. And so with that, some of our next steps really include, continuing to implement our plan and build on the community input of lived experiences when we focus on raising awareness, amplifying voices, and revitalizing successful initiatives that were done in the past. We want to highlight that it's important that that the task force develops key performance indicators to track our progress, assess our impact of our initiatives and the impact that we're making in the community. And we'll continue to provide council with updates as required, and of course, deepen our partnerships and drive meaningful change, and continuously work alongside our residents, stakeholders, to further shape and celebrate the town of Ajax. And with that, our presentation is done, so I'll open it up for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. We have Councillor Lee is first.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. I think the group is doing a lot of good work. I just have a few questions. So what is the rationale in revisiting the terms of reference for the task force?
Through the chair, thank you, Sterling, on that one. So basically, we are trying to refine the terms of references because initially this group was working to hear from the community, see what needs to be done, and now that we have a confirmed plan with tangible action items, we want to make sure that we're tightening up how we're doing this work so we can really focus on the plan and the feedback that we receive from the residents.
Is the scope too big now, too small? How would you describe the current terms of references?
I would say not necessarily the scope being too big. However, there's a lot of things that come from the plan, the original terms of references that might touch on aspects outside of the anti-racism work. And that's kind of where my role comes in as the DEI officer. I'm here to support community initiatives across the town with multiple groups. But we really want to remember that the Anti-Racism Task Force was established to focus on anti-racism initiatives. So not necessarily saying we're not going to be working with the community on other topics, but in order for them to really work on these tangible aspects, we want to make sure that they have the time and resources to handle those.
So paraphrasing, in areas where there's intersectionality, like the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, and there's obviously a sizable, racialized component of that, it'd be considered but not necessarily focused on because that is your role as our DEI coordinator. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Correct. And we do want to bring in these other populations when we are working on those intersectional times. Pride, there's lots of intersectionality happening. So not necessarily saying they won't be invited to the table, but really making sure that my role stays as a broadened community aspect, whereas the Anti-Racism Task Force is really focusing on those core anti-racism tasks.
So in this vision then, as opposed to having a formalized 2S LGBTQI member, you would bring them in to consult, I'm guessing, during Pride Month, for example. Yes,
yeah, and that stands for any kind of underrepresented community. We want to make sure that, if there's a time where we need a specific member, we're calling on those community liaisons, let's say, to kind of provide guidance, provide that extra layer if our current task force doesn't have someone from that community that can also speak to that from an intersectional lens.
And then would this be an annual thing then? Each year you review the terms of reference as needed?
Yes, especially with the task force continuously providing updates to council on a yearly basis, and if not more, we want to make sure that our terms of references are continuously reflecting that.
Good. There was a piece in there about equitable hiring policies and practices. So this is something that I've been championing within Ajax Council. What are some examples of that the task force sees?
Yeah, great question. And so it's important that with hiring practices that they're inclusive. And so an example would be having someone from the BIPOC community, which is, again, a Black, Indigenous person of color, a racialized individual, to be part of the hiring committee. So looking at internal staff such as the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee or a representative from the diversity office at the town to sit on a hiring panel when hiring occurs.
Are we not doing that currently? I don't know who can answer that. Oh, Mary Loser.
Through the chair to Councillor Lee, we currently don't have a member of the, from the diversity and equity staff in interview panels. However, we do have in HR, we have 4 members who are responsible for the recruitment of staff, 3 of which are from the BIPOC community and 1 that's non-racialized. One that is, I'm sorry, non-racialized.
So they are the ones in a sense that scour the pool. We already have blind resumes. I know we did that much.
That's correct.
Scour the pool and then bring those resumes to the appropriate manager.
Hiring managers, yes.
So then the next gap though would be, what if that manager, department, whatever, is exclusively white? Then would we not, let me rephrase, would HR have a problem with implementing that recommendation of bringing someone from the racialized community to sit in on those interviews?
We already have, because again, the members of the team that are responsible for recruitment, 3 of them are from the BIPOC community. And so those are, and in addition to that, we do have the anonymized screening that we had implemented last year to ensure that hiring managers are looking at redacted resumes and then going on from there.
So we are saying that in the past, we'll call it
year,
every new individual that's been hired by the town of Ajax, there has been someone racialized in that interview process.
I would say that for the most part, yes.
Is there a way we can codify this to make sure that there is always someone racialized present in our HR policies? Or do you see a problem with that?
We would have to look at our staffing in order to be able to accommodate a request as that.
Okay. Thank you for those answers. Chair, you've allowed me to go extra long. I appreciate that. It's a problem we continue to have in this town, and I've brought it up before. I will not necessarily bring it up again, except that I think any step we can take to ensure the playing field is level, we should absolutely proactively be taking those steps. Because we do have a diversity problem in this town, and I think these small steps we can fix. So thank you, Mary Lou, and thank you, Chantal, for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Henry.
Thank you. If I could just leap off of, through the chair, off Regional Councillor Lee's questions with regards to the hiring practice and the resumes. Sorry, I have to bring you back up. I'm sorry. So when you get in applicants and you have racialized people sitting from the department viewing the applications, and then it goes to the next level, which is a director level, is that correct?
So all the applications go through a system of which once the posting closes, those resumes of the candidates are then sent to the hiring manager. So it's not necessarily to the director unless it reports directly to a director.
So to the hiring manager, and then from the hiring manager, what happens? Let's say there's 10 applicants that have filtered through this streaming process. You folks in HR have looked at and said, okay, there was 100, we got it down to 10. Here's the 10 we think are qualified. Here's the interview process. So who does the interview process at that time, the manager or HR?
Both.
Both. So it's a 2-step process or a 1-step process altogether?
It's once the candidates have been selected, then we have the staff in HR are preparing interview guides along with the hiring manager, and then they come together as a panel to interview the candidates.
Oh, one panel, one-stop shop.
That's correct.
Let's get it done. Okay.
That's correct.
So at that point, and I'm going to jump off of what Regional Councillor Lee said, we have nothing firm that says that someone from diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion, is on that panel. Regardless if a racialized person is sitting on that panel, we don't have a specific outline that says diversity, equity, inclusion, a trained person in this field be on that panel for the hiring process, correct?
We don't have anything specifically in writing on that. However, we work very closely with DEI in collaboration with them in their initiatives. We also, in 2024, for instance, we had 945 interviews in which we did. And so sometimes that would make it very, very difficult for one person to sit through all of those interviews. But as I said, we do have members who are on the team. And in addition to that, we have one permanent member of Human Resource Services who serves on the diversity committee on a permanent basis throughout the course of the year. So they are involved in all of the committee meetings that occur and are bringing new initiatives and things of that nature as they relate to DEI to HR services.
But that person, just to clarify, would not have a DEI education background, correct? They sit on the committee and they observe what happens throughout the year, but they themselves were not hired with a DEI background education, correct?
That's correct.
So if we as a council left here today and talked, I don't know, let's say we wanted to change the framework of what that looked like, how would that happen? Through a motion? Like if we wanted to say part of the hiring practice would be that someone from DEI sat on that committee and went through the interview process. I'm not saying we do, I'm just asking a question. What would that look like?
Well, I think that would be very difficult to do without hiring a number of individuals simply because of the sheer volume of the interviews that take place. And many of those interviews may be taking place all at the same time. So you wouldn't be able to have, one person attending every single interview.
And in our department, our DEI department now, we have one person, correct?
Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Through the chair to Councillor Henry. Currently, the DEI team is down a staff member, but we do have 2 full-time positions. The interviews for that are taking place in the coming week and a half. And I just to supplement what Mary Lou was saying is the workforce census recommendations that were provided from the consultant and the work that happened a couple of years ago that have now provided us a framework for moving forward, have a series of, I think it's 21 recommendations around ways to enhance the town's hiring practices to ensure they are as equitable as possible. So there is a lot, I would say a high volume of policy work that needs to be done at the staff level between DEI, HR, and senior management that we would recommend take place and that will be taking place over the coming year. So I do think that the recommendation from the task force is welcomed as one of those things that staff are looking at, because it is always good for staff to learn about these things that other municipalities are perhaps doing or other organizations do that can enhance the equitability of our hiring practices. But with anything that staff would recommend to council, we would do the due diligence and do that background research, that we would work closely with HR, members of the task force and the DEI team to ensure that whatever was recommended to council was implemented or recommended in such a way that would create the outcomes that we are all hoping to achieve as a team between HR, the task force, and DEI.
And sorry, when you say this policy and framework that's in existence, who put that in existence?
So the workforce census was a survey that was done of all staff, and recommendations were presented to council last year, and that work informs the work plan of the DEI coordinator in public and strategic affairs.
So excuse me if I remember this correctly. I remember Ms. Sharma was here at that time. And wasn't there mention that we did not have a lot of response from the racialized employment workforce in response to that survey? So the voices might not have necessarily been heard as much?
Through the chair, our survey response was fairly high. I can look back exactly what that number was. But the survey went out to all staff, and it was inclusive in the sense that it went beyond collecting race-based data about staff. It went into accessibility. It went into a number of other things that were surveying staff on ways that the town could be more inclusive from a variety of perspectives for staff, current and future.
I would be interested to know of the racialized employment staff we have, what percentage responded to that survey in the future? I don't expect you to answer that now. That would be unreasonable to ask that of you now. So when we are hiring, this is my last question, when we are hiring our new DEI team member, will the current DEI team member be sitting in on the interview?
So through the chair, our current practice, as Mary Lou has mentioned, is that the DEI staff do not sit in on every interview that happens across the corporation. There are many, many, many interviews that happen every single day. So from a resourcing perspective, I don't believe it's feasible that the DEI staff sit in on every interview.
I'm not asking about everyone. I'm just specifically asking about the DEI department to fill that space. Will we have the DEI person sit in on that interview?
So for that particular interview, that hiring panel will not include any staff from DEI at this time because they are a colleague and it is not practice. Mary Lou can speak to that a little bit more, that a colleague sits on an interview panel for somebody that would be on the same team as them. Typically, it's a supervisor, manager from other departments. I will say in this case, this panel will include a representative from HR services. In addition to the HR generalist that actually does the interview prep and all that work, there's somebody else from HR that's sitting in on that panel with us to ensure that the person that we're onboarding has the lens and appreciation for the ongoing policy work that has to happen here between DEI and HR moving forward.
Thank you for explaining that whole process to me. I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Last on my list, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Just a very quick question. Thank you for the excellent presentation. Very useful, and I appreciate and acknowledge all the work that the task force does for our town. And here, Councillor Bauer, or Councillor Lee, I'm Councillor Bauer. Your comments that you have echoed since I have met you on council continue to be important, so thank you. So I just had one quick question about a bullet on page 50, which is long-term goal. Recommend funding for grassroots initiatives that encourage civic engagement among youth who identify as racialized and for other underrepresented groups in Ajax. Focus on initiatives that empower leadership, amplify voices, and build stronger community connections. Great long-term goal. I just wonder if you can comment the similarity of this, or is it too early to ask what you envision there? And I think some of those parameters currently exist within the Ajax Partnership Fund. So do you expect that the two groups will work closely, or is it a different pool of money, or et cetera?
Hello. Okay. Through the chair, thank you. Yes, so currently in the APF, we also currently help review those applications, and we're continuously looking at it from a DEI lens, as well as the bursary funding. That's quite a permanent part of the APF currently, but also after the 4 years are done, we still want to make sure that there's ways that we are still applying this lens and working with community groups to bring in these DEI initiatives. And we're also looking at other ways to keep on looking at grants that specifically target either hiring racialized youth or bringing those programs forward. There's a lot of other provincial and federal grants that can do that work. So we're consistently eyeing those to make sure that we're in line with that, and that when those do come about, we are connecting community members that are already doing that work to us to kind of create stronger applications and stronger initiatives.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That was my only question, Mayor.
Thank you. That exhausts the speakers list. Appreciate your delegation and all the work that you do for the town. Thank you so much. That concludes our presentation/delegation section. We've been here for just shy of 2 hours. Let's take a 5-minute break and then reconvene. That carries. General Government Committee, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Dyes, that the General Government Committee report dated January 13th, 2025 be adopted. Questions? Nope. Those in favor? That carries. Summary of Advisory Committee reports, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Bauer, that the summary of Advisory Committee activities dated January 20th, 2025 as attached to the meeting agenda be received for information, and that the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Questions on the committee, advisory committees? No, please vote. That carries. Are there any regional council reports? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Your Worship. We had an update from Metrolinx at Committee of the Whole on Wednesday, and they informed committee that they will no longer be funding or be a part of the Durham-Scarborough BRT project. When this first came to council, well, it's been in the works for quite a few years, but 7 years ago, we applied for a grant. We basically said, why don't you let us do this because we'll do it faster. So 7 years ago, we applied for the ICIP grant, and we received enough funding to do the entire project. 7 years later, fast forward, everything is more expensive, and we now don't have the funding to complete it. The following 3 phases will begin in 2025. Steeple Hill to Meriton Road in Pickering, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Dixie Road to Bainbridge Road in Pickering, Rotherglen to Harwood in Ajax, and Harwood to Wicks Avenue in Ajax. The rest of the project, the remaining sections and timelines will be $23 million in 2026, with 73% of the funding being used by the remaining of the grant, and the rest of it will be done through development charges. The next part of the section that will be done, they don't specify which is where they're doing it, but it's $22 million starting in 2028, financed through development charges and regional reserves. And $50 million will be starting in 2029 to 2034, financed using Durham Region Development Charge revenues and regional reserves and funding and funds. There is still a significant amount of money that needs to be invested to the tune of $385 million, which will require funding from senior levels of government. So just an update that Metrolinx is out, and good luck with all that. You've got to find your own money.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Also want to announce that there is a high-profile committee trade where Councillor Crawford and I have switched committees now. Councillor Crawford goes to Finance along with 2 first-round draft picks. She'll be talking about the money. I am now talking about poop and roads, areas of expertise, if I do say so myself. So yeah, I'm now.
Everyone's got it.
Yeah, I'm now on the Works Committee, and Councillor Crawford is now on the Finance Committee. Mayor Collier is still on Planning, though it's renamed to the Community Growth and Economic Development Committee. And obviously, Regional Councillor Dyes is still on Health and Social Services. So please relay all poop questions to me. even in your personal life, just throw them to me. All right, thank you, Chair.
Can I say it? No, I won't. I'll say it flat. No. Councillor Henry, questions?
Thank you. I'll say it for you, Mayor. No, I'm kidding. Hope you heard that word too. Now you know where those questions go to. So my question is to Regional Councillor Crawford, and we've talked about this, but I'm going to ask, and you've done your best. So this is not directed at you personally, but why can we not just say, look, we don't have enough funding for these projects, and we're out. We're out. We don't want this. Our residents don't want the road ripped up. We don't want this. You're not going to fund it enough. And my understanding also is that there was a federal grant that was applied for that we did not receive as well, correct? Those are my 2 questions. we're out, and federal grant.
Councillor
Yeah,
Crawford.
so the federal grant was the zero admission funding for transit, for the transition of our diesel to electric fleet. And the response on why we didn't get any funding was because we asked for too much money.
So did we get any money?
No. So if you ask apparently for too much money, you get no money. Yeah, so that was, and we, so hopefully we'll be having an announcement soon about something for that. But as far as getting out, at this point, we have come so far in the process, that is like EA studies, design studies, like we're talking about going into the ground in 2025. Like this year, we're gonna start this project. So, I mean, the good news is you'll go really fast through Ajax and then not through the village and then really fast through Pickering. But I mean, even parts of Scarborough, they're not doing now. So it's really is, I don't understand even the whole project to begin with, but they're gonna do it because through Ajax and Pickering, I understand why they picked that area, because the infrastructure is there and the roads are already wide enough that it'll be minimal disruption, although it's still 5 years, minimum disruption to the actual transit, like traffic congestion. And the current bus lanes don't work. This way, if you move them into the center, at least then it is dedicated bus lanes that they don't get caught up in the traffic congestion. So we're not losing any traffic. I don't care if they ever look at the village, so I'm fine with that because they were going to destroy that anyway. So, but that's really, we can't now say no because we've come so far in the process, ready to do construction. So very interesting that they come to us last week and say, we're out.
Yes, very interesting. So can I hold you to that about traffic congestion?
No.
No, okay, excellent. And so I guess my comment back to you would be, and to whoever you want to take this to at the region, is it does seem like a bit of a Band-Aid solution. We're going to go really fast through Ajax, we're going to slow down through the village, pick back up in Pickering, possibly come to a standstill in Scarborough and keep going from there. How is that better transit?
I didn't ask for the system. Yeah, so I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on regional council reports? Nope. Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moran, that the regional council reports of January 20th, 2025 be received for information. Please vote. And that carries. That concludes regional council reports. Moving on to notices of motion. The first is from myself and Councillor Henry, a motion to implement short-term rental framework in Ajax. I'll be very brief in my comments because I feel that this is really a housekeeping motion. Short-term rentals are here already. We may as well regulate them, make them subject to our new accommodation tax, so at least we can recoup the costs if we have to respond to any of the issues. I'll leave it there. Councillor Henry, did you want to speak to this?
I did, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, I agree with you. At first I looked at, when I first got elected and I was like, no, let's just, no short-term rentals, that's it. Let's just ban them. But the thing is, if we ban them, they're still gonna happen. We're not gonna be able to regulate it and we're not gonna make any money from it. So now we're at a point where we're going, okay, how do we control this? And just like automatic speed enforcement machines with anything, money. So funding, money. If we can control it through some type of system where if you break the rules, there is some kind of penalization in some way, and have a framework in place, I think this is our best bet right now. In conjunction with a comprehensive zoning bylaw, relooking at Airbnbs versus B&Bs, where someone's on site versus someone not being on site, what areas that will allow for. I think the two things together will come out with some kind of solution that will work better than trying to ban this and let folks try to get in under the radar. So, thank you.
Questions? Hearing seeing none, please open the vote. That carries. Next item is the meeting educational needs and new density projects. Councillor Crawford, Councillor Dies. Councillor Crawford, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This really came out of a conversation I had with Director Romanowski. We were talking about how, really all municipalities have had to start to look outside of the box when it comes to development and, doing things differently. And he was saying, like the school board's asking for 8 hectares of a land to build a new school. Well, we don't have 8 hectares of land, do we? Any 8 hectares of land to even offer them for a new school. So, maybe we need to start thinking outside the box, even in the education world. And with all of the developments going up, looking at podium schools, whether that's elementary, whether it's high school, maybe they're not in the podium, maybe they're part of the development. And so I know that that's going to be really different for education. I know when I was in education, you had to see 350 kids, the whites of their eyes in your classroom before they would even consider building another school. Well, maybe that has to change a bit because people aren't having kids like they used to have kids. So maybe that has to change a bit. And if capacity gets tight in the school system, maybe we need to start looking and working with it. So the motion actually asks for the provincial government that they require developers to work with the school boards to see if there's something that we can do outside of the box and start to build within these massive developments that we're looking at right now. So that's really what the ask is. Thanks.
Councillor Dyes, as a seconder, did you have comment? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's really very important as we go through intensification programs that are happening in our communities, particularly in this major transit area on Westney Road that hasn't been rezoned. And there's a really good, example of how there's been some requests for high rises, intensification going quite high, and yet there is nothing there to support a community or a residential community in that area, including schools. So we really do have to think outside the box, and I think we have to think very early on in the process to include the appropriate partners so we can plan appropriately for these communities as we transition. So thank you.
Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Mayor Collier. I just would like to say thank you to my council colleagues for putting this motion forward. I think it's great, excellent. The question and concern about schools in our high-rise, high-density areas with mixed use, et cetera, I think has come up at pretty much every ward meeting or presentation or CAB. So it's something, important, and I'm really glad to see this come out. So thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, I'll just comment quickly because this is something that I don't know if anybody ever outside of major centers like Toronto thought of before. Now we're dealing with our MTSA, the Van Dusen Holdings proposal we just did at Westney and Bailey. Case in point, that one development alone, those 6 towers, my understanding triggers the need for a school almost. And if you were to have a conventional school site, that would be more than I think the land available for that. So we would lose that complete development. It just doesn't make sense. So they need to be looking for new innovative ways to make these things happen, especially with the changing environment of construction going forward and the high density that we're having. So happy to support. Don't know if it'll do any good, but we have to at least try. Seeing nothing further, please open the vote. And that carries. Finally, the motion requesting redistribution of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities for sustainable infrastructure funding. Councillor Tyler Moore and Councillor Crawford. Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. So back in 2010, as some will remember, we had a split. We had the 5% GST and then the 8% retail sales tax. So it became the HST, all combined harmonized sales tax. But at the federal level right now, when there's development in our municipalities across Ontario, the 5% that's paid by developers just gets taken right out of our municipalities and goes to the federal government for everything they need. This motion would be advocating that a portion of that 5% would be left in the municipality. Over 60 municipalities have requested this. This also falls under the can't hurt to ask, but it would seem that there could be a move there that would be very beneficial for the municipalities. So hoping we get full support on this, and the federal government is listening to me speaking right now. And they make a big change and leave a little bit of money every time to the municipalities, seriously, to deal with everything we have to deal with growth. Thank you.
I'm certain the federal government is on the edge of their seats watching this Ajax Council meeting right now.
That's in my heart they are.
Council, all the ones, where are they, out in Marlborough or somewhere out in Quebec? Anyway, Councillor Crawford.
I'm sure Mark Carney has us on the hot list right there, right there. Again, it can't hurt to ask, right? And we have been asking the province for a different way of funding municipalities. We can't always be looking at the tax base. We need to have other options for funding the needs of our municipality. So we're just giving them one option that they could look at.
Seeing nothing further, please open the vote. That carries. Moving on to bylaws, moved by Councillor Dias, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, and that bylaws number 1-2025 to 9-2025 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Questions on the bylaws? Councillor Lee?
Not a question, just congratulations to Chris Porter, who's our new deputy chief. So we're looking forward to big things from him, working with our chief Burge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Henry?
Thank you. I just want to ask a question with regards to 06 election sign bylaw. And I just wanted to clarify, because I did get some feedback on this. So I just want to clarify that if a candidate has permission from a property owner and puts the election sign on the property owner's home, and then the property owner moves the election sign, as often happens when folks are cutting grass and whatnot, and moves it to the boulevard area, but yet you have a roster of all your election signs who give you permission and what, I'm hoping, and I'd like someone to clarify, that will not be counted and pulled, like if it's pulled by bylaw, that's not counted as a deduction from the $500 deposit. I want clarification on that, please.
Good question.
My interpretation is it is, but I'll pass this on to who can answer this.
It's unfair.
I can try.
Deputy CEO Cooper?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Henry. So I think we have to appreciate when an officer is out doing sign sweeps, we don't necessarily know who was responsible for placing the sign on the boulevard rather than on the private property. So in that case, enforcement would proceed. We would remove the sign and bring it to town hall and put it in the compound. And but I mean, we are reasonable people. If a candidate came and explained the diligence that they take to ensure it's on private property, and the officer was persuaded that it was moved through error or something like that, we're certainly open to reason. So we'll deal with those circumstances as they arise, but obviously it wouldn't stop enforcement in the moment because the officer wouldn't have the background. Although they do make a practice of actually going to the property owner from time to time and asking, did you give permission for the sign to be on your property? Have you moved it? They do try and get that background when they're in the moment.
So the reason I ask this question is because we as current council have a different role than the candidates that are not elected coming forth. So we know that we cannot go to bylaw and ask certain things as it's seen with interfering with bylaw. So I want to be really careful about how this will proceed, even though we'll be lame duck at that time. We'll be going into an election. I don't want it seen as trying to manipulate the system or manipulate the officer. And I'm wondering, like, if we were to provide a list of our, through an email or something of our run sheet of streets and whatnot, would that be given out to the officers that are doing this particular job and take it into account? I don't want to, like.
Councillor Henry, that's not happening.
So this is why, Mr. Mayor, this is why I'm asking these questions now, because it's been made very clear, we have to be very cautious about our interaction with bylaw and what can be seen as interfering. And even though we'll be lame duck in an election, we still had a position of authority, and one does not want to override that position of authority they just had.
That's not what we're talking about. It's up to every candidate that runs an election to know the rules.
100%. I
Okay?
agree with you.
And no member of this council is going to get involved with this at election time with bylaw. They'd be crazy if they did. We have a policy. It's up to I assume every candidate will be provided with the policy upon
Yes.
registration.
Yes, we do sit down with each and every candidate and walk them through a very robust orientation manual, which includes orientation to the sign
Right.
bylaw.
So, I mean, and I've had 6 elections, and I've seen rampant just people putting the signs out everywhere.
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor.
And this is what is meant to be addressed. I'm certain that our bylaw staff, common sense will prevail if there's one out of place. But if they go along Delaney, for instance, which I've seen often, and it's plastered with the candidate signs right out on the boulevard, yeah, they're gonna be subject. But if it's a one-off, I'm sure we can
We can
be
navigate
confident that
this.
our bylaw staff will exercise discretion.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify that point because we do know folks, take pride in their grass in Ajax. And as such, when they're doing their lawns, they move the signs out to the boulevard, not realizing the limitation of where the sign can go. And they are expensive, and we want to make sure that people that are following the rules have a fair opportunity to participate in that part of the election. So I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you for your time.
Anything further on the bylaws? Hearing, seeing none, please open the vote. And that carries. The confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Lee. The bylaw number 10-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on January 20th, 2025, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Questions? Please vote. Thank you. And finally, moved by Councillor Tyler Moran. Rob, I think you signed every one of these. And seconded by Councillor Lee that the January 20th, 2025 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Oh, I missed new business and announcements. My apologies. Thank you for correcting. Oh, look at this. Look at this. That's a first. Any notice of motion? Councillor Tyler Moran. Any notice of motion? No. Any new business or announcements? All right. I'm sorry, I see Councillor Lee's name first on the list, Rob. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just remember, February is Black History Month. The town will be either participating or assisting in various events. Please go to ajax.ca/BHM. And then I'd be personally remiss if I didn't mention that Chinese New Year is coming, or the new lunar moon, I think it's called. Though embarrassingly enough, I don't know what day it is. Councillor Bauer, do you know what day it is? Anyways, you can find out. It's Year of the Snake. I know that much. So gong hei fa choi to everybody celebrating. Thank you, Chair. The 29th of January is Chinese New Year. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tyler Moore.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to let everyone to know that Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford and myself, Councillor Rob Tyler Moran, will be discussing Ward 1 community issues and town issues on Wednesday, January 22nd. That's in 48 hours at 6:30 p.m. at the Quaker Meeting House, the beautiful Quaker Meeting House at 457 Kingston Road West, starting at 6:30 p.m. We encourage everyone to come out. If you've been out before, bring a friend. We'll see you there. Thank you so much.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Lee and myself have our ward meeting on January the 28th at Audley Recreation Center from 7 to 8. Bring a friend, they get a donut. You might also get one. And nothing to do with council, but happy 19th birthday to Kelly Henry.
Oh, that's good.
Any further announcements? We've already done the it's already closed? No, I have one. All right, go ahead. I know.
Happy birthday to Mayor Collier. Tomorrow, I believe, is your birthday. Yeah.
See, I knew I should
Carrot cake is his favorite, by the way.
65, 66?
Take a decade off. Take a decade off that. See, I knew that shouldn't have been allowed. The confirming bylaw is already done. Moving on to the adjournment. Moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Lee that the January 20th, 2025 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Please vote. Look at that, that carries. Thank you, everyone.